So growing up, Bob's father helped him to recognize that war is simply not the answer to any problem. The birth of his son, David, crystallized him with a passion to work for peace. He considers this work both a responsibility and an opportunity. As far back as high school, he stood up and spoke out against the Vietnam War, and he has never stopped standing up and speaking out. Many outstanding leaders in the anti-nuclear movement inspired him and instilled in him a sense of urgency to work for a world without nuclear weapons. He practices family medicine in Ventura. The people of Ventura know him as a great family doctor, but they also know him, as many of you do, I'm sure, as a dedicated and diligent peace worker. Every year in his community, he informs the people of his community how much they're paying in taxes that go to the military and to defense, while so many other human needs go unmet. He has been a leader in the Ventura chapter of PSR since 1985. He is a leader in Beyond War, a founder and leader in Citizens for Peaceful Resolutions, CPR, Citizens for Peaceful Resolutions. He is a man of firm character and boundless enthusiasm. He is also tenacious. He doesn't give up. He never gives up. He demonstrates in his life the values that I most admire: compassion, commitment, and courage. I think Bob Dodge must be an amazing physician. I know from my experiences in working with him across the country, from New York to Santa Barbara, that he's a man who cares deeply about ridding the world of nuclear weapons, and in so many respects is a remarkable peacemaker.
Today, I'm speaking about from Hiroshima to Fukushima, a nuclear legacy. We're still facing a legacy of those bombings 67 years ago, and the Fukushima explosions and meltdown will be with us for decades and for the rest of all of our lives and probably for all of time. They used to have, years ago, they talked about safe background radiation effects. And I will say, again, the Physicians International Movement has identified there really is no such thing as a safe background radiation. Physicians for Social Responsibility identified in the early 60s, when we used to test nuclear weapons atmospherically, they identified strontium-90, an element that looks to the body like calcium, in human baby teeth. So the deciduous teeth of human babies were all of a sudden radioactive with strontium-90. That only came from atmospheric testing. At that time, that resulted in the Limited Test Ban Treaty, which basically stopped all atmospheric testing and drove all nuclear testing underground. And to this day, 40-some years later, we're still working to try to get a comprehensive test ban that stops all testing. Well, today, the world still has 20,000 and more nuclear weapons. The United States this year spends some $54 billion, with a B, $54 billion on nuclear weapons programs. And every moment of every day, we are held hostage to the existence of these stockpiles. I have a bucket here, and again, I'm going to drop a single BB into the bucket. That BB will represent a megaton, 1 million tons of TNT. So 1 megaton, 1 million tons TNT firepower. All of the Allied bombings for the 6 years of World War II, all of the Allied bombings, including the 2 nuclear weapons, okay, over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, that amounted to 3 megatons of firepower. The current nuclear arsenals that exist in the world today. So have you close your eyes. That chilling demonstration is 5,000 BBs, or 5 billion tons of TNT equivalent. That's what exists in our current nuclear arsenals. We stand at a tipping point in our history, a time where the world is threatened every moment of every day with the potential of nuclear war and the destruction of life as we know it. What we must do is we must change how we think. We must recognize that war is obsolete in a nuclear age. That war itself is an institution, just like slavery, just like apartheid, just like women's suffrage, that no longer fits our world and can no longer exist. We must work to abolish all war. I'm humbled to receive this award, and I'm a person in the trenches, and it's work of PSR that I can remember all the way back to medical school. It's the remarkable work of PSR that allows me to go ahead and do this. And again, I'm a simple country doctor, and this is really remarkable. I do so receive this award on behalf of so many peacemakers, past and present, including my dear friend David, and who continue the hard day-to-day fight of peacemaking. And I also accept this on behalf of my son David, who lost a lifelong battle with childhood leukemia at the age of 24. As with each of us, our journey to this evening has been different. As a boy growing up, David mentioned my father was one of my greatest advocates for peace and was unwavering in his support and encouragement of my work. As an educator and dean of a local college in Denver, while serving as an Army reservist lieutenant colonel rank and a leader of the interfaith community in Denver, he articulated the futility of war as a means of resolving differences. My formative thought years were in the 1960s and 70s in an environment of Vietnam, and the old adage, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, rang true with me and remains with me to this day. In medical school, after a background in molecular and cellular biology and physics, I saw the last epidemic. This was for the first time that I'd seen this, and it had a profound effect on me as a physician in training, instilling a remarkable concern about nuclear weapons and war. Ultimately, with my son David's birth, in my first year of practice, I had the intense realization that as a father and as a physician, I had not only a responsibility but an obligation to do everything in my power to leave him and future generations a better world. My work from that day to the present has been to make the connection between the threat of nuclear weapons and war to our daily lives. The connection is very real and constant. Whether you're concerned about economic and social justice, environmental threats and climate change, public health, or peace and nonviolence, nuclear weapons participate in each of those. As for economic and social justice, in these fragile economic and critical times of limited budgets, know that Los Angeles County spent this past tax year greater than $1.7 billion on nuclear weapons. Not the war, not defense, but nuclear weapons, greater than $1.7 billion. In my community of Ventura County, we spent over $168 million at a time when we're closing down senior nutrition programs, library hours, after-school programs for our children. We spent over $168 million on nuclear weapons, not one of which can be used. The United States spent over $54 billion. And David mentioned that. That's a number, actually, that I've spent over 25 years working on. And actually, now that that number's coming forth, I actually found that number years ago. I spent night and day looking for these numbers because you can't go to the US budget and identify a line on nuclear weapons. You have to go under the Department of Energy, the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security. And I used to work on that work, and I came up with a number of $45 billion. The National Priorities Project said, "You're full of poop." That's not, it's about $12 billion. I said, "No, it's not. I'll give you a line item." After many years, I got hooked up with a gentleman, Stephen Koziak, who heads the Office for Strategic Budget Analysis at the Pentagon. He called me and said, "You're full of poop. It's $54 billion. And let me give you the numbers. So now that's a number that's used around the country. If you're concerned about environmental threats and climate change, okay, we live every day with a Superfund site legacy from the production of these weapons. As mentioned, our local area, Santa Susana nuclear reactor meltdown in my own community, Simi Valley, continues to present an ongoing real and present danger. The possible use of any one of these weapons presents the greatest potential environmental disaster, either from a limited use, such as a, quote, dirty bomb, or full-scale war resulting in a nuclear famine and nuclear winter. In addition, if climate change is not addressed with its resultant ever-shrinking access to critical resources, the ensuing conflict from environmental degradation is likely to result in nuclear war. Quoting former head of the Central Command, Admiral Anthony Zinni, "We will pay for this climate change one way or another. We will pay to reduce greenhouse gases today, or we'll have to take an economic hit of some kind, or we will pay the price in later military terms," he warned, "with massive human life lost." If you're concerned about public health, there is no adequate medical response to any nuclear explosion, whether by a dirty bomb or weapon use. A single nuclear weapon would result in over 10,000 severe burn cases, over 10,000. We have 1,500 burn beds in the United States, 1,500, and at any moment there are only 300 available. Over 10,000 from the single weapon. And finally, if you're concerned about peace and nonviolence, Albert Einstein said it best: "With the unleashed power of the atom, everything has changed, save our modes of thinking, and we thus drift towards unparalleled catastrophe unless we change the way we think." Nuclear weapons, war, and the legacy of these weapons affects everything. Nuclear war is the greatest public health threat facing us every moment of every day. The fact that we sit here this evening is not a result of a strong defense, military might, or massive, ridiculous military spending. It is a matter of sheer luck, and luck is not a security plan, not a defense strategy, or public health policy. Polls show that a majority of citizens around the world favor the elimination of nuclear weapons. We must continue to make our collective voice heard. As with every public health threat, we must truly prevent what we cannot cure. So though our paths are different, we each have an opportunity and responsibility to do our part. Each of us can and does make a difference. Working together, whose voice among us will result in the tipping point that finally eliminates nuclear weapons and realizes the will of the people? Let it be yours. If you're not already walking with us on this journey or have paused, join us now. Everything we hold near and dear, and most importantly, our children's future, depends upon it. We must not stop until this goal is achieved. Thank you.